What's going on, Cowboys Nation? It's your boy DMV back with another one. Gonna do my Mark Holmes ritual. Let's say hello to the football gods. Y'all know me, man. I'm always paying homage to the homies, to the brothers out there. Shout out to my guy Mark Holmes. But today we're going to talk about the defensive coordinator situation. So we know that Dan Quinn, left, gave his walk-in papers yesterday. He's going to be the Commanders' head coach. Looks like he's going to be taking some guys with him. From what I'm hearing, Joe Witt Jr. might be going over to Washington as the defensive coordinator. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I do know that he's the internal candidate for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not sure when they'll interview him, but bringing in outside sources from what I've read could possibly, give Washington, the opening to really, sign him and for Joe Witt to decide to go there. And from what I understand too, Al Harris might be making the departure to Washington too. That's what happens. Normally when you get normally defensive staffs, they are very, very tight knit. So when one guy goes, everybody goes. When I played ball in college, even though I was on the offensive side of the ball, defensive guys, they are a lot closer than offensive guys. I don't know why. I can't explain why it is, but it's that way. And it looks like it's that way staff-wise as well. Al Harris has already came on the record and said, if Dan goes somewhere, he's more than likely going to go there as well. So that leaves the Cowboys in the conundrum right now, where we already know that they have interviews set up next week with Ron Rivera and Mike Zimmer. Now, as we know, both of those guys have been head coaches in the league for quite some time. Both of them have been on teams where their teams didn't, they've had good teams, but they didn't perform as well as they could have in the postseason. Um, well, I mean, you can go back and say that the Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl and lost. That's about it. But everything outside of that, underwhelming. Minnesota has had good teams for years, you know what I'm saying, with, below average quarterback play. And when they got Kirk Cousins in there, that was supposed to be what, got them over the hump. And it didn't, you know. But as defensive coordinators, both of these guys are known to be wizards. Ron Rivera, tough nosed defensive coordinator. Linebacker play. I just remember him in Chicago with Urlacher, with Briggs. Those linebackers covered ground. Those linebackers were tough. The defensive lines were tough. The defenses were just tough when he was in Chicago. And he earned his right to be a head coach with how those defenses were over there with Lovey Smith. Mike Zimmer, he had a stint with us. Honestly, I hated that we got rid of Zim when we did because we had a really good defense. I don't know if you guys remember Dat Nguyen, Dexter Coakley. We flew around. Those defenses were fun to watch. We couldn't do nothing on the offensive side of the ball. We got old. The triplets got old, and you know what I'm saying, Zim was on the Dave Campos staff, I believe, and then on the end, with Parcells was his last year, but I think that might have been the best defense that we had with Zim, and then we switched to the 3-4. I'm not sure what Ron runs, but I do know that Zim, when he was in Minnesota, they had a lot of two safety packages, and it was a lot of two shell type stuff, and you had a guy like I forget what his last name is because I'm doing this off the top of the head, but number 22 Harrison, I forget his name, but he hell of a safety, still around, baller. You know what I'm saying? I just remember in Dallas we did a lot of the same things, and we had some really really good defenses. But the one thing that gives me a little bit of caution with these guys is that they're a little older. You know what I'm saying? So Zim not so much as Ron. Ron being a head coach and having to run the defense on the back end. None of that really impressed me in Washington. Seeing what they had last year, but they had also gotten rid of a couple of guys. They were kind of tanking, so you got to put that into consideration as well. With Zimmer, Minnesota, their defense always seemed very, very, very solid to me. It always seemed like they had very, very good personnel. The personnel always fit with whatever the philosophy was. The one thing that I'll say about both of these guys is that they're going to build the defensive lines and you're going to have linebackers. And I do like that aspect of stopping the run. What worries me is when you have a lot of these young gun offensive coordinators adding a lot of motion to the game now, window dressing. Um, do these guys have what it takes to really keep up with these young guns out here? The Shanahan tree. How do they fare against the Shanahan tree? Because in my mind, I feel like the defensive court, that's what we've struggled with, in all honesty, is the Shanahan tree moving forward. We can't do nothing with the motion. We can't do nothing with the run game. They have been a thorn in our side. All of the coaches that come from Kyle Shanahan's tutelage. So it's like, what do we do? You know, bringing in both of those guys to interview is a step in the right direction, but I would like to see what other candidates they bring up. I don't want this to be a lame duck situation like it was the last time. I do know that Dan Quinn worked out for us up until it didn't work, but I hated that process. You guys know that. I hated having the guy that you already know and not really seeing what's possible out there, not bringing in somebody else to draw up stuff on the board, not really knowing whether or not you have the very best candidate that can come in and get the most out of this defense or out of this team. I hated the Mike McCarthy process, them only having Mike McCarthy and Marvin Lewis interview for head coaching jobs. I hate that. And I hate that we put ourselves into a corner to where it's like we have limited candidates. I know the Joneses like that, and quite frankly, they probably known that they were going to do this for quite some time, and those are probably the two candidates that they're going to have. They probably have known that Joe Witt's probably going to go out the door out with Washington. They probably already known that Al Harris was going to go out the door. I just hate that it's a 1-year situation. You're bringing in you're going to bring in two ex-head coaches for a 1-year situation. And, you know, it leaves a lot in limbo. It seems reactionary, not proactive at all, which is what we do, which is why we've hit the ceiling and never gotten over the hump. Why the ceiling hasn't increased for us. You know, I would like to see them bring Vrabel in. That personally is the person that I want. I want Vrabel. I know we'll be tough nosed. I know that he is. There's two things with Vrabel, right? Coming in here, he's either going to be your next head coach, which I'm okay with, or your defense is going to get tougher. But the one thing that I do know is that is the type of temperament that I want here in Dallas. But let me know what you guys think, man. I'm just going off the cuff, what I'm thinking, what I know based on the interviews they have lined up. And let me know who you guys want the Cowboys to go out, what candidates you want to see, who you want in as the new defensive coordinator, and where we take that step forward. Because until we know who the defensive coordinator is, we don't know what groceries to get on defense. We don't know what the philosophy is going to be. So appreciate y'all for stopping by. I'm out. Peace.